How do we receive bad news, my friends? How do we receive bad news? I don't think there is an easy way to receive bad news. It's just not. We don't like it. It goes against our grain. There are some people trying to push it away. It's not real. It's denial. It's just a little bit like the stages of grief. When you lose a loved one, first, it's just not real yet. It's just not real. And then there may be an emotion, anger, something coming up, and bargaining, and not quite sure. One may fall in a hole, in a depression, and hopefully in some way at some point, there is something of acceptance of what happened and the status quo with an opportunity to live into a new life. You never get over it. You maybe go through the valley and somehow try to live with it, no matter what that bad news is. And I think we, as Christians, as the ones who are called to follow Jesus, we get both. We get bad news and we get good news. The bad news is we are not in charge. We cannot fix ourselves. It's not in our hands. It's not in our ego strength. We cannot pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. When it comes to the spiritual matters, by God's grace, hopefully in some way, in one way or another, we open up to be receptive, and by grace, hopefully God lifts us up in some way and guides us on our journey and leads us forward. It's more than we can do. And whoever has some wisdom and experience from their life, we know that deeply. It's more. We're not in charge. We're not in charge. That is bad news in one way. But the good news is also we do not have to be in charge. We do not have to be in charge because there is someone who is holding us, someone guiding us, someone walking with us. And that's the expression of faith, of trusting, of surrendering, of walking through the valley and hoping and trusting and hopefully experiencing some of being guided through that. But often by the grace of God, not because we are in charge. Because there are situations you just throw up your hands and you realize it's not one thing I can do about it. Cannot make it unhappen, cannot change it. It's just hitting rock bottom, hitting the wall. It's just, that's what it is. There is bad news and there is good news. And the bad news, and it is real. And I sense personally a wake-up call. Let us wake up to what is real. Real in the terms of what scientists tell us, that in an image you can say the house is on fire Any one of you watch the bushfires in Australia? Just something is not right. Something is not right. The people who come to John the Baptist to be baptized, they come with the understanding they are baptized into a changed life, into letting go of the old and opening up to a new life. The traditional term in our Christian faith is repentance. In today's language, it's best described as turning around. That's the Greek word saying. It's almost like your GPS telling you, take the next legal U-turn. You missed the exit. Just turn around. That's the idea of turn around. You're off road. You're in the wrong direction, so turn around. That's the idea of repentance, turn around. And when John the Baptist says that, it's meant like for us, turn away from our way and turn around to Jesus' way. Because what we want, our way, doesn't always coincide with Jesus' way. So, turning around means turning to Jesus. And when Jesus starts preaching, according to the Mark passage that we just heard, Jesus says, now is the time to do that. Not tomorrow, not in a week, not next month, not in a year, not 5 years from now. Jesus says, now is the time. The time is ripe, fulfilled, right here and right now. Turn to Jesus. Become receptive for that message. Become receptive for it. Time to turn around, to turn to Jesus right here and right now. Preachers have done that very differently through the ages and centuries. John the Baptist said, you snakes, you vipers, you go to hell in a handbasket, whatever. Jonathan Edwards, one of the Great Awakening preachers, has a book written, Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God. Imagine that. To me, it's an invitation of Jesus to turn to the positive. I don't know how you work. The more I get hit on, the more I shy away. Just somehow I work by grace. We're made up differently. But the invitation is to turn. And then the people who come to John the Baptist, after he tells them, this is what's going to happen. Turn or burn, turn or burn. Turn around to Jesus or you'll be lost. You'll miss the boat. You'll miss it all, your life. They ask him, what shall we do? What shall we do? And Jesus says two things. To the ones who have 2 coats, he says, give one away. So show compassion, care, love. Give someone who is in need part of your own. And the other thing he says to those soldiers and to the tax collectors, take what is fair. Don't take more. Just don't take advantage of people. Be fair. Do the right thing. Be just. Do the right thing. So the two things that John the Baptist says, one is have compassion and love. Love and have compassion. The other one is fairness, justice, do what is right. And I think we are called to do both. On one hand, be compassionate and caring. And when we talk about creation care, that is the invitation to compassion, to care for all of God's creation, because it's God's holy creation. The second piece is the justice, and that's why we call it creation justice too. It's about fairness of what is right, that everyone should have the right to live. Everyone should have food enough to live. Everyone has the right to be a human being with their basic needs met. Creation care and creation justice. And for me, they're linked together with the greatest commandment that Jesus says, sums all the others up. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And the neighbor meaning not just the next door person, but it may be the more distant neighbor, the one whose crop is drying up, the one whose water are rising and who is being flooded. Those are our neighbors too. It's almost like we're this global village. We are linked to each one of them. And what hurts others has an impact on us too, or should be that wake-up call for us. What does it take? I think what it takes is a change of heart. A change of heart, an awareness. And the Bible is talking a lot about people when they harden their hearts. Or the prophets describe the Old Testament people as the stiff-necked people. They're just stiff, hardened. It takes a softening, a warming, a becoming more aware, more caring. And in terms of our global village, our creation, there is hope. There is hope, and I think each and every one of us can do something. Each and every one of us can do something. I heard from a person who grew up in Pittsburgh, and he said, you know what? You could not see because of the mills, the coal dust. You just could not see, and there was this sour smell in the air, Right now, Pittsburgh looks very differently than it did years ago. So change for the positive is possible. Where and how are we called to make a difference? I think nothing great that has been accomplished through the century happened without pushing, pulling, friction, frustration, and not giving up. There's a saying, no one in power will ever give up freely their power unless they're pushed and pushed and pushed. We would not have freed slaves today. We would not have civil rights. We would not have women's rights. We would not have LGBT rights unless people, or we do have them because people rallied for them. People stood in the streets. People pushed in that direction. With our global crisis, I think it will not be different. I think the only way it will happen is people like you and me who would make many small steps in the right direction. It will. What you do does make a difference. What will you do? We don't like to get bad news, do we? We don't like it. Yet when it sinks in and settles in, we dwell on it. Blessed are those who are moved to action. What will you do? How will you be moved? How are you receptive for bad news, but also for good news? And there is good news.